The rain hammered against the corrugated iron roof of Spanner and Davenport Investigations, a symphony of industrial percussion that did little to soothe Dick Spanner's circuits. Dick, a second-generation MK/IV robot detective, sat slumped in his swiveled chair, the polished chrome of his face reflecting the flickering neon sign outside. He hadn't had a paying client in 3 weeks, unless you counted Mrs. Miggin's missing chihuahua, which had turned up under her sofa cushions 2 days later. Even his voice modulator was sounding a little weary. Another night, another zero. Dick Davenport, a jovial border collie with an unnaturally positive outlook, bounded into the office, shaking off a spray of rainwater. Chin up, old boy. Something's bound to break soon. Maybe Postman Pat's got another case of pilfered parcels. Dick sighed, a barely audible hiss of compressed air. Pat mostly deals with missing birthday cards and rogue sheep. Davenport, this city needs a case that's got some teeth. Just then, a knock rattled the door. It swung open, revealing Postman Pat, his red van parked haphazardly on the curb outside. His face, usually a sunny shade of pink, was etched with concern. Dick Davenport, thank goodness you're here, Pat exclaimed, shedding raindrops like a well-groomed labradoodle. I overheard something at Mrs. Goggins this morning. He lowered his voice conspiratorially. Mr. Whitelaw, you know, the one who lives at Hanton Hall? He's hosting that big charity ball tonight. Well, apparently, there's talk of something terrible happening. Davenport perked up, his tail wagging furiously. A mystery. A spot of daring do. Sign me up. Dick, despite his programmed cynicism, felt a spark of something. Could this be it? A case that wasn't about lost catnip or stolen gnome hats. What exactly did you hear? Patty asked, his voice modulator clicking into a slightly more interested tone. Pat fidgeted with his hat. Just whispers, really. Something about daggers, and someone not wanting the ball to happen. I thought you two should know. Hanton Hall's a bit out of my usual route, but, well, I felt I had to. Dick nodded. You did the right thing, Pat. Davenport, check the fuel cell. We're going to a ball. Hanton Hall loomed against the twilight sky, a gothic behemoth of crumbling stone and gargantuan gables. Fireman Sam, looking surprisingly dapper in a borrowed tuxedo, nervously adjusted his tie as he, Bill, and Toad squeezed out of Toad's vintage motorcar. Right, Sam, Toad declared, puffing out his chest. Remember the plan. Observe, listen, eat as many vol or vents as possible. Bill, the ever-practical lighthouse keeper, adjusted his thick-rimmed glasses. And try not to knock over any priceless artifacts, Toad. They were here on Whitelaw's personal invitation. Sam had once rescued Whitelaw's prized poodle, Fifi, from a burning shrubbery. Bill had untangled his yacht from a treacherous sandbar. And Toad, well, Toad knew everyone, and possessed an uncanny ability to sniff out gossip. The ballroom glittered with opulence. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing light over elaborately dressed guests, the air thick with the scent of expensive perfume and nervous energy. As the evening progressed, a distinct undercurrent of unease began to ripple through the revelry. Whispers followed Jonathan Whitelaw, a man with a slick charm and a predatory glint in his eyes, as he navigated the room. Sam noticed him engaged in a particularly heated conversation with a woman with fiery red hair and a determined gaze. He later learned she was Rachel Garland. Just as the orchestra struck up a waltz, a piercing scream shattered the illusion of gaiety. Panic erupted. The music faltered. People surged towards the grand staircase. Sam, ever the first responder, pushed his way through the throng. He found Whitelaw's lifeless body sprawled on the ornate rug in his master bedroom. A single, antique letter opener protruded from his chest. Right, Sam announced, his voice surprisingly steady. Someone call the authorities. And someone get me a fire extinguisher. I have a feeling things are about to get flammable. Dick Davenport and Pat arrived as the first police cars screeched to a halt outside Hanton Hall. The place was a maelstrom of flashing lights and panicked chatter. This is it, Dick Davenport barked, practically vibrating with excitement. Our chance to shine. Dick, using his robotic physique to navigate the crowd, flashed his highly unofficial detective badge at a constable. He quickly found Sam, Bill, and Toad huddled in a corner, looking shaken. What have we got? Dick asked, his voice a low monotone. Sam relayed the details, his face grim. Whitelaw's dead, stabbed, Looks like foul play. I saw him arguing with Rachel Garland earlier, Sam added. She seemed pretty furious. Dick's internal processors whirred. Rachel Garland. The name rang a bell. He accessed his memory banks. Ah, yes. Rachel Garland was a local architect who'd been embroiled in a bitter dispute with Whitelaw over a proposed housing development. Whitelaw had allegedly stolen her plans and used them to secure funding for his own project. Where is Ms. Garland now? Dick asked. I saw her slip out of the ground shortly after they discovered the body, Bill replied, his voice tight. She looked distraught. Right, Dick said, his gears grinding. Davenport, you and Pat, stay here and gather information. Keep your ears open. See what you can find. Sam, Bill, Toad, give me a tour of the crime scene. Let's see if we can find something the police missed. This smells like more than just a simple murder. The master bedroom was a picture of opulent disarray. Overturned furniture, a shattered vase, and the lingering scent of blood. Dick meticulously analyzed the scene, his optical sensors picking up details that human eyes might miss. The letter opener, Dick observed, examining the ornate weapon. It's been wiped clean. The place reeks of secrets, Toad declared, sniffing the air dramatically. I can practically taste the deceit. Sam pointed to a small, locked safe hidden behind a portrait. Whitelaw was obsessed with security. That safe probably contains something important. As Dick examined the safe, Davenport and Pat returned with a wealth of gossip. Apparently, Whitelaw was heavily in debt, Davenport reported, his tail drooping slightly. He was gambling away his fortune, and the charity ball was supposed to be his last-ditch effort to stay afloat. And, Pat chimed in, I overheard Mrs. Fanshawe saying that Whitelaw had recently changed his will. He left everything to mystery woman. A mystery woman. Dick's processors spun faster. Rachel Garland, a stolen housing development, gambling debts, a changed will, and a dead man. The pieces were beginning to fall into place. He requested a crowbar from Sam, and quickly broke the safe open to find 3 items. A loaded Colt Python revolver, Whitelaw's will, and a draft copy of the Planning Commission documents Garland designed for approval of the new housing development scheme. He knew he had to find Rachel Garland. She was either the key to unlocking this entire mess or a victim of Whitelaw's machinations. Dick, with Davenport in tow, tracked Rachel Garland to an abandoned mill on the outskirts of Gloucester. The rain lashed down as they approached, turning the muddy ground into a treacherous bog. Inside, they found Rachel Garland huddled in a corner, her face pale and drawn. In her hand, she clutched a handful of documents, presumably the stolen plans for the housing development. Ms. Garland, Dick said, his voice firm but not accusatory. We need to talk. Rachel looked up, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and defiance. I didn't kill him, she said, her voice trembling. I swear, I didn't. She explained that she had come to Hanton Hall to confront Whitelaw and demand the return of her designs. He had refused, taunting her with his wealth and power. They had argued, but she had left before the murder took place. I needed those documents, she said, her voice cracking. They were everything I had worked for. The development was my dream, and he stole it from me. Dick believed her. Her story had the ring of truth. But if she didn't kill Whitelaw, who did? He needed to uncover the mystery woman named in the will. Then, a voice boomed from the doorway. That's enough. Garland, standing there, a shadow against the flickering light, was Fiona Fanshawe, a prominent member of the charity board and a close confidant of Whitelaw. In her hand, she held a Colt Python, the same revolver Dick had found in the safe. Fiona, Rachel gasped, her eyes wide with shock. What are you doing saving my investment? Fiona sneered, her face contorted with malice. Jonathan was bleeding money. He was going to ruin everything. I invested everything I had in this charity, and then found that the money was all spent on debts. He wanted to sell Hanton Hall to pay off debts, and I knew I couldn't let that happen. It turned out that Fiona was the mystery woman in the will, a calculated move by Whitelaw to appease her and keep her quiet about his financial misdeeds. Fiona had planned the entire night, hoping to use the chaos of the ball to silence Whitelaw and secure her future. She'd planted the letter opener, figuring everyone would suspect Rachel Garland, given their history. A tense standoff ensued. Dick lunged, grappling with Fiona for the gun. Davenport, with a well-timed nip to Fiona's ankle, provided the necessary distraction. The gun clattered to the floor. The police arrived moments later, sirens wailing. Fiona Fanshawe was taken into custody. The aftermath was a whirlwind of interviews, paperwork, and flashing cameras. The case made headlines across the county, solidifying Spanner and Davenport investigations as the go-to agency for complex criminal matters. Rachel Garland, exonerated and with her designs finally returned, vowed to rebuild her life and pursue her architectural dreams. Whitelaw's debts were settled, and Hampton Hall was spared from being sold off to pay off debts. Back at Spanner and Davenport investigations, Dick sat at his desk, a rare smile flickering across his chrome face. "Well, Dick," Davenport said, wagging his tail, "we did it. Solved the case and saved the day." Dick nodded. "Indeed, Davenport. It appears this city still needs a detective with teeth." Pat arrived, bearing a plate of Mrs. Goggins' homemade scones. "Thank you for your help, Dick." "Davenport," Pat said, smiling warmly, "you brought justice to Hampton Hall." And as Toad, Bill and Sam arrived, Toad carried in a platter of vol or vents left over from the ball, and Davenport promptly demolished 3. Dick sipped his motor oil, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction. He realized that while he was just a robot, he had made a difference to the good folks around him. Maybe this was what he was built for.